marry him? I mean, where people get these sort of narratives from, I'd love to know.
The Crown?
Oh, please. I think it should be called The Throne. But it really is the thing that everybody sits upon in the morning and then flushes. Because it's beautifully done. It's in terms of production, artistry, costume, writing, etc. It's magnificently done. So as a writer, I can look at it and say it's really well done. My God, as I said, it should be called The Throne, not The Crown. Because what it purveys is what people normally do on thrones.
So just to, if you could clarify a little bit more on that subject then. So Camilla wasn't in love with Charles, but Charles was trying to woo Camilla back then. Is that?
Oh no, they had a fling.
They had a fling,
but it was just a fling, and he was upset that as one is. But then you move on, and he moved on, and there were several girls he wanted to marry thereafter. But I had friends who could have married Prince Charles or other members of the royal family, because we're all contemporaries. And I remember I was very friendly with a certain girl who one of the princes wanted to marry. And she said, I'd sooner die than marry into the royal family. She said, all that ribbon cutting, God forbid. And, another friend of mine who is a princess who was mooted as a bride for Charles, she made sure she ran off with someone to prevent the marriage. And Anna Wallis did the same thing. Anna Wallis, to make sure that Charles wouldn't revisit the situation, married Johnny Hesketh. So, well-bred girls, unless they were very ambitious and unless they liked the attention, which Diana did, they did not want the role. And they didn't get the role. So I've forgotten the rest of the question.
Okay, so if Charles and Camilla's relationship was as tenuous as you described back then, how did it rekindle into what it has become today?
Oh, okay. Well, they had genuine affection between each other. And Charles was having grave difficulty finding somebody who would accept him. Because, there are a host of girls, as I just said, who he wanted to marry and he mooted the idea of marriage with, and they fled in the opposite direction. So he and Camilla then, because her marriage had not worked out exactly the way she hoped, because Andrews Parker Bowles was very dashing and a great swordsman. And he knew how to duel brilliantly and often. And of course, this caused her a great degree of misery. And she and Charles rekindled their romance. But he also had other amitié amoureuses, because he had Dale Tryon, Lady Tryon, who again was somebody I knew slightly. And so, it wasn't anything serious. And in those days, it's not like now. We live in a very puritanical age where, I keep on hearing young people say, oh, I'm going out with somebody, and if they look at somebody or kiss somebody or God forbid, they should do naughties with somebody, that's the end of it. In my day, my dear, until the wedding ring was firmly on your finger, you were definitely not putting yourself on the shelf. And people used to dabble. That was the done thing in those days. And if you didn't, really, it usually was because Nobody wanted to dance with you. Let's put it that way. So that was the second time around. Then he met Diana. And she actually was the initiator of the whole thing. And she knew what he would like because he'd been out with her sister Sarah. And she pressed his buttons brilliantly. And I actually used to laugh with friends of mine and say, oh, no, you're going about it all wrong. If you want to marry the guy, take a leaf out of Diana Spencer Wales's book. The way to do it is pretend to love everything. And, oh, I think you're so wonderful. I just love Balmoral. Balmoral is the most wonderful place on earth. And as soon as the wedding ring is on the finger, Balmoral? Are you crazy? You think I'm going up to that godforsaken place? I mean, really? But she shouldn't have done it because it disillusioned him, because he thought he was marrying a sweet, obliging, lovely girl, and it turned out he'd married a very demanding, dominating. She was only 20, but she was extremely dominating. She is the one who had absolute say over the furnishing of Highgrove. Even before they were married, she was giving input into Highgrove. And, she used to say that, she was training him up to be exactly what she wanted. And there came a point, this is my opinion, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. There came a point before the birth of Harry, or around the birth of Harry, when Charles decided, if I continue constantly compromising myself to make this marriage work, I will disappear as an individual. And at that point, he pulled back. And he then, for the next 2 years, if I remember correctly, I mean, we're going back a long time now. For the next 2 years, he had a monastic life. And then he discovered that Diana had had an affair with her private detective, Barry Manakee. And it's at that point that a mutual friend reconnected him with Camilla. So for the first, say, 5 or so years of the marriage, maybe 6, trying to figure out how long it was, he had no contact with Camilla whatsoever. Very occasionally, they would be at a large party together. They'd be across the room, and they purposely kept away from each other. She wanted to give his marriage every chance to succeed. He wanted to give his marriage every chance to succeed. But there comes a point when if you compromise any further, you will compromise yourself out of existence. And Charles was a very spiritual person. He was also in therapy, and he wanted Diana to be in therapy because Diana had a serious eating disorder as well as several other emotional problems, which had made the marriage basically untenable. And he wanted, and not only he, his father, his mother, they had psychiatrists and psychologists and psychotherapists one after the other, trooping through Kensington Palace, and Diana refused to nibble until later on down the line, when she decided she wanted help, then she got it. And that was what made the difference. But by then the marriage was over. So that's really how it went.
The Crown certainly didn't show that, so thank you for setting the record straight.
Well, of course it wasn't going to. Peter Morgan is very Republican, and their advisor, Robert Lacey, has been anything but what I would regard as consistent, because in his latest book, Brothers at War, in the hardcover version, he has that pink is pink. No, actually, he doesn't. He has that pink is green, and in the second, now latest version, it's green is green and pink is pink. But he completely disagrees with himself. So they push a very irresponsible, in my view, and very theatrically valuable and dramatic point of view that is detrimental to the interests of the crown. And they don't care. To them, they don't have a responsibility to the living, breathing people or to the nation. As far as they're concerned, if they can undermine the crown and make a whole load of money, they've done well. And if they don't undermine the crown and make a whole load of money, they've done equally well.
So there was a book, Diana in Her Own Words, and the interviews that she did. Don't know if you had a chance to look at the book, but I imagine you've seen the interviews that she did. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that when Diana was telling you anything, you had to be very careful what to believe. I mean, my first Diana book, Diana in Private, The Princess Nobody Knows, started out as an authorized biography. I even went into the palace about it with Diana's consent. It was going to be a biography focusing on her charity work for 3 of her charities that were 3 of my charities. Halfway through the book, interviews for the book, either she twigged or somebody said something to her. I suspect somebody said something to her. And she realized, because she said it, this is my get out of jail card. She realized if she spilt the beans, that she would be able to leave the royal family. I was perfectly happy to go along with it, as long as I thought it was the truth. When I realized that she'd done what Robert Lacey has just done with his book, completely changed the story in the middle of the recounting of it. You know, you cannot say, as an example, such and such is a wonderful person, and they've been totally honest and they've never done anything to harm me. And then when it becomes in their interest, actually, they're a real rotter and they've been really beastly, and, and when I realized that, when she changed the story to be accurate, and I checked on it, because I mean, the problem with Diana, where I was concerned, is we knew so many of the same people, and I was friendly with half her relations. And, there was nothing that she said that I couldn't check. And also, I knew more about some aspects of her life than she did, because my boyfriend at the time was James Buchanan Jardine, who was a cousin of Maggie Strathmore's wife. And she used to try to pump me for information about what was going on up at Glamis. She used to say, well, you know far more than I do, blah, 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 blah. So when I realized that she was lying, because she's going from, actually, I have nothing against Charles. He's a really decent man. He allows me to have my lovers, blah, 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 and da, da, da. And he has Camilla, I have James, and I've had da, 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 and 1 or 2 that she denied as well, which I knew. So, which was fine. I wasn't going to humiliate her, I mean, I think I mentioned 4 in the book. And believe me, I was extremely generous, because you could have added at least 1 0. And she was, because she was looking for love. She wanted love. And I'm not decrying that. But when she started, she went from that Charles was this really nice guy, and that he allowed her to have her own life. And he even used to allow James Hewitt to go and stay at Highgrove and instruct his children. I mean, how broad-minded is that, for goodness sakes? And then all of a sudden, Charles is this monster and this beast, and Charles has made her life terrible, and Camilla has it, and, you know, but she'd already told me about Barry Manakee. She'd even told me that how the whole thing started. It's in my book. She'd even told me that she believed that Barry Manakee had been wiped out by the Secret Services to prevent him from speaking about their romance. I mean, blah, blah. I didn't believe that, by the way. I knew that's what she believed, but I thought his accident was completely an accident. But I put it in my book. So, I mean, how does she go from that to, oh, it's Camilla? And she knew that in the early days it wasn't Camilla, that Camilla had nothing, that Camilla wasn't there. And I thought, no, you know, but I also realized if she's changed like this and she's done a vote farce and she says, my book is going to be the get out of jail card because she wants out. And she also has decided that the way to get out, and this I figured out very simply, was to make herself into the victim. Because, of course, as we now know, nowadays it's almost obligatory for every perpetrator to present himself or herself as a victim. You know, it's so tiresome. I mean, you know, have the courage of your convictions, for God's sake, you know. I mean, if you're going to be splendid, be splendid. Don't be a mealy-mouthed, splendid version of, oh, I'm wonderful, but I'm a victim. I'm marvelous, I'm a victim. And so I realized if she'd done it to me, she was going to do it to someone else. And I thought, wow. I realized I had information that was dynamite. And I had to think long and hard about whether I wanted to proceed and publish the book. I had a signed contract. I had got a part of the advance. And then I realized if I have to give back the money, and I'm not going to get what I want as well, which was baby money to adopt my children. I wanted to be free of my family, and I became free of them as a result of this. I realized as well, if I did not proceed with the book, her version would be published by someone else. And I thought it's actually my duty, since I know the truth and I know the ambush that is waiting for the Prince of Wales down the line. And had it been fair, I'd have allowed him to be ambushed. I'd have actually ambushed him myself. But because I knew it wasn't fair, I thought, no. And my book was published before the Morton book. And of course, then, Andrew Neil, Andrew Morton, Rupert Murdoch, all hopped into the frame to sort of denigrate the royal family. And remember, Rupert Murdoch is a Republican. He has no good thing to say about the monarchy. He doesn't really approve of the monarchy. And the agenda being pushed by the Sunday Times using the Morton book was that the royal family was cold and harsh and cruel, and Diana was this poor, sweet, innocent victim. She could be sweet, she certainly wasn't poor, and she was nobody's victim. Charles, if anything, was her victim.
So in the aftermath of the death of Di then, we saw Dodi's father and